Now, we're joined now by medical consultant, Dr. Olujede Olurotimi. It's good to have you in our studio right now.
Morning.
Thank you.
Good morning.
All right, now let's have a basic understanding to what medical tourism is. It seems to be a term that has been there for some time, but it seems to be a new term, the way we hear it now. What is medical tourism?
Well, as I've said, indeed it's been there all age long. But the fact that looking at what is happening in Nigeria in our present age and time, one will now focus on that because a lot of people know they're engaging themselves in medical tourism. Medical tourism basically means seeking help for your health issues outside the shore of your native country. Basically, that's what medical tourism is about. And I want to say that it's becoming a big issue in our country because a lot of people tend not to have believe in our health system any longer, and common headache, if I may use that, do that. That's medical tourism.
Is this just a new coinage, or the practice has been on with us for decades back?
The practice has been there for only God knows the number of years, especially for the rich. Indeed, is before now. It's something that has to do with class, in that if you have the money and you think you don't really have confidence in the current system of health within that particular time, then you want to go elsewhere to go and have the medical expertise. But in this age and time, it's no more class, it's no more issue for the rich. It's just because of the problem we have in the system, in that there are ailments. Talking about expertise, we have all that it takes in Nigeria, that I can say. Not talking about the number, talking about the resources we have. I mean, as per individuals, as per skills, we have those who have the skills, we have those who could manage almost all the cases we're talking about perfectly. But the issues, even if you have the skill, what about the environment? What about assessing even such skill, or you being available even at all this time to be able to take care of those seeking for medical experts in one form or the other?
Would you say we have, in Nigeria today, we have more medical experts, more doctors than we had, say, 50, 30 years back? Do we have more medical experts today?
Of course we do. I will say that clearly. But another basic truth is that I would say on air is Nigerians train medical experts for other countries. And what do I mean by this? Of course, when you look at you as a medical personnel, and you want to not necessarily compare yourself, but you have a plan, you have a goal in life before embarking on that particular profession. And at the end of the day, you realize that you're not realizing or getting the goals you set for yourself in life. Of course, you want to think of how to become, achieve your goal, and for that, you look elsewhere. For example, just Ghana there, you can imagine talking about medical teachers, trainers. You find it more comfortable to train people outside the country, even compared to what we have here. We have more medical doctors. Answering your question very, very clearly, we do have. But the problem is, an average medical doctor, an average medical personnel wants to seek refuge outside the shore of Nigeria because things are better off than there in terms of almost everything. But I believe it's a matter of time. If you want to quickly say, I'm not, funny enough, I've not really met him, we've not really had one-on-one contact despite my medical activism. But I have a strong belief, looking at the reports I've had from the current Minister of Health, that's Professor Adewale. I was at a particular gathering, we were having postgraduate medical college exam when his appointment was announced. And at that gathering, we have a lot of people, colleagues from different parts of the country, and they were really excited having him around on board. He's been CMD somewhere, chief medical director of a particular hospital before. He has all it takes to put the system in place. And with all what I've following all his whatsoever to this point, I think we should give him that chance. There's some things we'll get to.
It's okay. We'll come back to this, to understanding how these things work generally. Okay. Now, medical tourism is originally a term used to qualify a patient's movement from highly developed nations to other areas of the world to get medical treatment, usually at a lower cost. But more recently, however, the term is being generally used to mean every form of travel from one country to another in search of medical help, which can also simply be called medical travel. It also includes traveling to countries where treatments for particular conditions are better understood. Now, let me take you to my wall to have a basic understanding of how these things function, so we know how it goes. Now, Sunrise River Press 2008 reports that more than 50 countries have identified medical tourism as a national industry. It is a major sector boosting the economy of many developing countries such as Malaysia, such as Singapore, such as India. And when you mention the word India, I guess that is one of the biggest destinations Nigerians go to. But unfortunately, though, countries at the receiving end of medical tourism only experience its adverse effects, especially on their economy. Billions of dollars that should help their ailing economies are being pumped by the citizens into economies of the tourist countries. Now, let's move on to see other aspects of this. Now, Nigeria is undoubtedly one of the biggest sufferers of medical tourism in the world. Now, factors like inadequate medical equipment and personnel, and also inadequate infrastructures, have greatly contributed to the abysmal state of Nigeria's healthcare sector. And this has in turn made the people lose confidence in this sector. Let's move on and see. I certainly will be asking Dr. Olujede later on about the trust people have in the system. Now, this lack of confidence in the healthcare sector has further led to the increase of top public officers and other wealthy Nigerians with life-threatening ailments traveling abroad in search of better medical care. Now, Nigeria is leading the chart of Africans seeking medical care in India, with about 42.4% of those seeking medical attention abroad. Now, one of the very prominent case is that of the wife of former President Olujede, who died in 2005 from complications of cosmetic surgery at a private clinic in Spain, and said in 2005. There are so many other cases in that regard. Now, Nigeria's pharmaceutical export to Africa, India's pharmaceutical exports to Africa increased from $247 million in 2000 to $3.5 billion in 2014. But medical tourism by Africans to India was said to be on the increase due to poor facilities on the continent. Let me pause there for a while and bring Dr. Olujede in here. When it comes to, you said earlier on that we have qualified medical personnel. Now, if we have to pitch that together in a ratio of the availability of medical doctors, qualified medical doctors, and the number and the population of Nigerians, how adequate is that?
No, it's not. It's not adequate.
Okay.
Really, I'm not going to play any politics with that. Obviously, it's very, very clear. Looking at the record we have with Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria, I will clearly say that the ratio is quite below expectation, following the World Health Organization ratio of Nigerian population to number of medical personnel we have. But that, as it may, I don't think that should really, though it's a very strong factor, but that shouldn't really encourage medical tourism as you have defined from what you've just said. The population is not commensurate with the number of medical personnel we have in Nigeria presently.
Okay, if you look at some other countries, for instance, like Ghana, which is just very close, they also can boast that they have the ratio of doctors to the population. But do you think they are doing that badly?
Oh, they are not. Well, I want to say also that it's also very important talking about managing this information. I realize that in this part of the world in Nigeria, we tend to blow out of proportion most of our in-house challenges, and that's because over the years, all along the line, when the situation starts to brew on a very basic rudimental level, we don't really have authorities to come into action and see how to, not necessarily palliative measurement, things that could at least give assurance and hope that sooner than what the population think, or think the issue will be solved. We tend to leave it until we have casualties, we have victims, before we now start our fire brigade approach. So I think managing the situation is what I would say is different from what we have in neighboring countries, perhaps Ghana, as I've mentioned, and talking about the issue in Nigeria. For example, the issue of Ebola. Sometimes ago in Nigeria, of course, if you are taking that issue the way we normally take medical issue in Nigeria, only God knows what will have become the population of Nigeria. But proactively, things, I mean, it was managed out of normal protocol. You could see on the part of, for once, the federal level, the state's government, and also the local whatsoever, at a point they had to come to agreement, you know, try to bridge all forms of protocol to make sure that, in fact, I wouldn't want to go on there and mention some of the practical ways that they defied protocols just to make sure that we curb that something.
So you're saying maybe these protocols that they defied to fight Ebola are the bottleneck, really?
Yes,
is that what you're saying?
It is. For example, I'm not trying to defend our those executives, I mean, managing federal institutions. Sometimes when you hear some things from them, it's quite ridiculous. For example, it's a very strong issue. Budget have just been passed, and you can imagine to have, although you will say that they have, I wouldn't remember the term now, what I mean, things they could spend before the budget was passed, but most of all their plans, most of all their action plans has to hinge on, we are waiting for the budget to be passed at the expense of the health of Nigeria from January to only God knows when we're able to cross that hurdle. So the democracy is a very strong issue.
So more of this problem or challenge comes from the leadership structure generally. But we know that in the history of Nigeria, when late Professor Olujede Kuti, his leadership of the ministry was very phenomenal. And since that time, it seems Nigeria has not had that kind of a phenomenal leadership in the Ministry of Health.
Well, the issue is we've been able to politicize almost everything. And the fact that you are looking for perhaps a better placement, you don't want to become irrelevant to the system, knowing fully whether if you say the truth or perhaps you are trying to be proactive, they will just forget you because...
And you don't want to step on toes.
So for that, it has affected a lot of issues on ground. But for once, if you can defile that and try to be frank, and what I've noticed too is when you try to be frank and they see you performing and having, you know, being able to have set objectives and you're fulfilling those set objectives, they will align. It's a matter of time.
It's
At
okay.
least Lagos State's government of the last era is a pointer.
All right, let me bring you back to my wall here, and let's go ahead to seeing this. Now, according to 2013 statistics released by the New Delhi-based Research and Information System for Developing Countries of 275,000 tourist arrivals in India, Nigeria accounted for 34,000 of that, and the report showed that 42.4% of 34,522 Nigerians who visited India came for medical treatment. That's statistics released in there. And the breakdown of African countries or African tourist arrivals in India and medical treatment percentage this is what we spread here. Now, in South Africa, from this statistics, South Africa has the lowest with 0.9% of South Africans going to India. And then Egypt is followed with 1.1% of their population going to India for medical check. And then we have Mauritius, who has 5.2% of that figure. And then Sudan is another country with 9.1%. And then Kenya, 9.2%. And Tanzania, 18.5%. And the others from different countries of Africa collectively make 13.9%. So if you break that down, you know that Nigeria really is on the high side when it comes to number of Nigerians going to India. But however, let's move on now. Now, India is known mostly for its cost-effective medical treatment with high standards in cardiology, in orthopedics, in nephrology, in oncology, and neurosurgery. These are some areas basically that Nigerians, when they have issues related to this, they go in there. Now, all of this is suitable for an average African customer, if you have to put it that way, who can't afford to purchase high-end products from the West. Now, let's get to the difference between India and maybe the West when it comes to these areas, cardiology and so on? Is it about the quality of treatment, or it's about the cost?
Basically, it's about the cost.
Okay.
It's cheaper in India than the West. And for that, even if you are really, really rich and you realize that you can get something not necessarily better, the same form, but cheaper, and they have a lot of success story. That also matters, because not even the issue of money now. Oh, even if I have the money, we're talking about health here. If I eventually succumb, present myself for such treatment, will I be able to come out alive? Will I be able to come out? And I'm talking about the quality of life I have to live even after undergoing such surgery or medical procedures. All those factors that are really there. As much as in the West we have the personality, we have all the gadgets, we have the personnel, but I think by and large the cost and the way manner other countries can access that, because the issue of visa and security is also a very strong issue, since they've taken it as part of their economy, so they allow that.
Okay. Now let me still take you back in here. Now, moving ahead, from the statistics generally, India is exporting pharmaceutical products mainly to East African region. Now we see, if we have the breakdown, mainly to East Africa, West Africa and Southern Africa. And if we have the breakage there, East Africa has about 40% of that, and then West Africa has about 25%, and Southern African region has about 20% of the pharmaceutical exports from India to Africa, if we break them by region. Now, if we move further, further evidence to back the Indian High Commission's assertion, as the statement is the statement of Nigeria's former Minister of Health, Professor Babatunde Oshotime, and also that of the former Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, in 2011, that about 30 billion naira, which is equivalent to about 20% of the budgetary allocation for the healthcare sector in 2010, could be saved annually if Nigerians who travel abroad for medical services could be treated locally. It's a big question. I'm still going to come to that, but let's move on here. Now, according to Medical Tourism Association's research surveys and statistics, Nigeria is said to lose about one and about 3 billion every year due to medical tourism culture. Now, Nigerians just feel, okay, if I have this, I have to just go abroad for medical check and attention. Now, in 2013 as well, the Nigerian Medical Association said that Nigeria was losing about $800 million, and that's about 125 billion naira annually to medical tourism. Okay, now let me come to Dr. Olurotimi here. When it comes to the issue of a directive or advice by government, we need to be able to discourage Nigerians from traveling abroad for medical treatment. In the face of this equipment not being available, like you said, the environment is not being available, how effective are such kind of directive or such kind of advice? Deriving from the fact that the Minister of Health now said that from January 2017, they might certainly put a ban on any Nigerian traveling on government sponsorship for medical treatment abroad.
Well, I would like to say that you can only really be successful in doing that perhaps for civil servants or those who have wanting to do with the government or the other. But talking about medical tourism here, really, it's not about the government. It's not about people working for the government or those who are in government alone. I want to say that an average Nigerian, if you have your way, the mentality is something outside the shore of Nigeria is far better than you can imagine. We are being told that we're importing toothpick. So what I'm trying to say is that that will have effect or have its toll on those who have to do with government funds. But medical tourism is far more than that. I think what we need to do is to come back to the drawing board and let's put the basic infrastructures in place. I'm not going to mention names or mention institutions, but really to discourage medical tourism is...
Let's mention, I'd like to mention a particular name here based on what we have. There's a hospital in Akwa Ibom. the former governor of Akwa Ibom, who is now a senator.
Okay.
The hospital gobbled about 30 billion. The construction of the hospital, the equipment and everything, all what you were mentioning in India for oncology and all that, they're all in the hospital, according to the governor on the day that this hospital was commissioned. So we expected more patronage. But lo and behold, when the same governor was involved in a motor crash, a little accident, he went abroad for treatment.
Well, I want to say that we cannot do with such incidences, but by and large, the major factor is still that maybe I would say it's a form of lip service or lip services. If you are the originator, or perhaps you are instrumental to establishing such an establishment, you should be able to follow it up. One thing is to have the structure in place, to have all the equipment. The equipment will not use itself. Number one, have you been able to get, not necessarily enough, but on an average note, people that will be there to work conscientiously. Apart from that, having such fantastic hospital or arrangement, are we sure that the road or the community, even around that particular hospital, is favorable for people to have confidence in such a system? You can imagine you have such a big, I wouldn't know where something was or is being situated. The security around the area is very, very paramount. Patients really sure that even when they come in there, their life is secured, going back home or no. There are a lot of factors we need to look into.
Okay.
So I think we should look into that.
All right. Let me bring in Moses Omokena here to give us a perspective as to how Nigerians are reacting to this issue. Moses, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
It's nice to see you.
Hashtag medical tourism. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So let's find out what Nigerians had to say in view. Of course, with the hashtag medical tourism, they did not spare us their thoughts. Ike Prom says, Nigeria spends over 1 trillion naira per annum in medical tourism, and just a fraction of this humongous sum could fix Abia or perhaps any other state. And Ebuka Akara says, Nigeria rated world's 3rd exporter of medical tourism to India. Yes. Joseph Woodman says, no single hospital or country can offer every specialty. Nigeria's medical tourism policies do not serve the people. And Peter Okpatewa says, freshly pressed 981, at a time of unprecedented medical tourism, the government shouldn't, asphyxiate whatever is left of medical practice in Nigeria. And Jay Anyanti says, medical tourism is for ailments untreatable here. For example, cancer. Nigeria doesn't even have reliable radiotherapy. On a very sad note there. So, now, if you look at, have a, an aerial view of, the medical, industry in Nigeria, it's 3-phase from social critics. Sometimes we have the expertise, but no facilities. Sometimes we have facilities, no expertise, and sometimes we don't even have both. Now, the perception an average Nigerian has is that when you go to a private hospitals are really meant for those who can afford it to reach. So, how can we have, a quality healthcare system that is still yet affordable for an average Nigerian? What is the way to go, really?
Oh, the way is very, very clear, and that's medical insurance. We need to really engage, the government should really do all they can to make sure that we develop the Nigeria insurance health scheme. Very, very important. We've had a lot of paperwork that are on the shelf. If those policies, if we could bring them and really implement those wonderful policies, we've had cause to have stakeholders meetings. In fact, in 2014, I was part of it. We were in the State House about 2 days. All the stakeholders were all there, and I want to say that at that point, the convener of the meeting then was the Minister of Health. He was also there for the 2 days, but all the policies, all the decisions that we arrived at that particular meeting, we should have it on our shelves. I mean, it should be made public, and the government should be seen implementing those policies. So medical insurance will really go a long way, because paying out of pocket fee is not friendly at all. But with those insurance policies, I think by and large, average Nigerians will have access to medical treatment.
All right.
Well, let's see how that will go, because we're still trying to grapple with the minimum wage, and sadly, an average Nigerian is still living below the dollar. So, but that seems like a long-term dream. Yes. You know how we roll.
All right, all right.
See you
Moses,
soon.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we cannot absolve the doctors of some of this blame, like some people have said that even doctors make referrals to hospitals abroad from some gains. Is it
That's how we roll.
Yeah, it is to a reasonable extent.
You gotta chuck it,
factor is also there. But I want to say also that if the system is really not necessarily fantastic, but you are sure you have, in fact, you have confidence, strong confidence in the system. I think no medical doctor will persuade you to say that you can't have this treatment in Nigeria. We have to go abroad. You can always have second opinion. It's not a must that you must hear from a particular individual. You make your research, you try and ask from people before you make your informed decision.
But when it comes to that may just be the idea. We're trying to see a scenario here where someone is sick, the family members don't want to lose him. And then a medical doctor who is attending to him says, there is a certain hospital in India you have to visit. No one else visit that particular one.
hospital
because they have because maybe he has his own interest, but he wouldn't tell the patient. But the patient is desperate and certainly has to go to that hospital because they want his life to be saved. So in this kind of syndicated activity generally, how do you handle that when it comes to interest of the medical doctor in the face of this?
Well, of course, I want to appeal to Nigerians that we shouldn't be desperate. Of course, if you want to, the tendency is there because you don't want to lose that they are members of your family. But with this age of internet, communication, social media, I think you don't need to fall into such, to be so gullible, to fall into such an advice.
Gullibility.
Trying to ask.
Okay. All right, so we have joining us from our Abuja studio, a general practitioner, Dr. Toyin Agbaja. Many thanks for joining us this morning on TVC Breakfast. Now, really, the ball is in your court as a doctor. Some reports have said some doctors are really culpable when it comes to referrals to hospitals abroad. Do you agree? Hello, Dr. Toyin.
Good morning.
Good morning. Are doctors culpable when it comes to referrals to hospitals abroad, even when those ailments can be treated in Nigeria?
Well, it depends. This is a two-faced coin. Some doctors, yes, might have selfish interest and actually refer. But then, in some instances, it is actually cases are referred because we don't have either the facility to handle them here or the expertise to handle them here.
All right, Dr. Agaja, the point there is India, although has more advanced medical system than Nigeria, but in the general outlook, India still has even some of the worst challenges than Nigeria. So when it comes to, in the face of economic and social challenges and all of that, and even general governance incompetence in some areas and corruption in other areas, how did India get to this level where they are now, generating attention from the whole of the African continent and even some parts of the world when it comes to medical tourism, different from what Nigeria is doing?
Well, India was able to invest in the health system, but then it wasn't the Indian government. It's more of the private practice in India, the private practitioners in India who have invested, because they also have the bureaucratic bottlenecks that we suffer in Nigeria. So the Indian private practice has, they've invested in facilities, they've invested in expertise, and they're able to provide, a world-class treatment to third world countries at a cost that is affordable to us. So in as much as it's not the best they're offering, they're still offering something that is affordable to us, which is better than what most of us can attain here. But another point that we forget to look at is the Code of Medical Ethics in Nigeria. The rule of professional conduct, where self-advertisement is banned. Some of these expertise are now emerging in Nigeria. In fact, some of the Indian hospitals are partnering with hospitals in Nigeria. But then we can't advertise. So I think the Code of Medical Ethics in Nigeria should be reviewed, really.
Okay, there are also cases and allegations of substandard or fake drugs that we have in Nigeria here, and some of them, arguably, are coming from India. Is this just a ploy to hope to also create more rot in the medical system in Nigeria so people can travel abroad for medical treatment?
No. Sorry, you have to take that again.
All right. We'll come back to ask you that question in a perspective. So let's go on the news update for the time. Kemi Foladeyemo is standing by, and then we come back for you to answer that question clearer. Kemi, good morning again.
We begin with the latest militant attack on oil installations in the Niger Delta region. This time, Niger Delta Avengers have blown up another oil pipeline in the Niger Delta. This time, it's also the 4 km 48-inch export line, which is operated by the Shell Petroleum Development Company Limited. The militant group initially attacked that same pipeline in February, and the facility was undergoing repairs when it was again blown up around 3 a.m. this morning. The group says it had warned against the repair of the pipeline, but the SPDC refused to heed their warning. The Nigerian Army has given details on the deadly attack of the Niger Delta militants on a boat belonging to the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. The Army said in a statement that 2 soldiers were killed, 1 wounded, 1 soldier missing, while 4 civilian staff attached to the houseboat were shot dead. No group was mentioned in the military's claim, but Niger Delta Avengers have denied involvement in the attack, emphasizing that their war is on oil installations. Multinational oil companies operating in the Niger Delta region must be mindful of their activities in order to save the lives of residents and the environment in which they operate. That's according to President Muhammadu Buhari during the formal launch of the cleanup of Ogoniland in Rivers State after several years of oil pollution. The president was represented by Vice President Yemi Oshibajo to formally flag off the implementation of the United Nations report on oil producing region 5 years after it was released. Bodo community, situated in Gokana local government area of Rivers State, was chosen to host the symbolic event because it was one of the worst hit communities when the oil spills occurred decades ago. President Buhari says the event is a confirmation of the federal government's commitment to improving the lives of the masses. The Senate is set to investigate the non-remittance of $12.9 billion oil revenue by state oil company NNPC into the Federation account. That money was paid by the Nigerian liquefied natural gas into the coffers of the NNPC, as revealed in the 2013 report of the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative (NITI). The agency's executive secretary, Waziri Adio, is also to be invited to brief the Senate on its findings. The Senate took the resolution following a motion on the issue by Senator Tijani Kaura. No date has been set for the NITI boss to appear. In the meantime, crude oil and gas production in Nigeria will decline further amidst the $7 billion cash call which the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has yet to pay to its joint venture partners. Industry experts say the funding problem has been increased by the fall in global oil prices, which drove down the country's earnings from the commodity. Nigeria's oil and gas production structure is split between joint ventures onshore and in shallow water with foreign and local companies. An industry source noted that unpaid bills had been piling up in recent months, adding that every year the industry gets less than it needs to function. Finally, at this time, the trial of the Senate President Bukola Saraki on charges of false asset declaration before the Code of Conduct Tribunal in Abuja will resume on June the 7th. The trial was stalled following the absence of the first prosecution witness, Michael Wetkas, who was testifying in the trial of the immediate past governor of Jigawa State, Sule Lamido. Chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal gave the order to the lead prosecution to adjourn Saraki's trial following a request by the prosecution counsel Rotimi Jacobs requesting June the 7th to the 9th for continuation of trial. Well, that's news update at this time. Back to Mike Ambusolami.
Thank you very much, Kemi. Thank you. All right, thanks for staying with us on TVC Breakfast. We have been discussing medical tourism in Nigeria. So many Nigerians traveling to India and other parts of the world for medical attention. And from the statistics we reeled out earlier on, Nigeria has the highest number of citizens traveling to India for medical checks comparative to other African countries and all of that. We have Dr. Olujede Olurotimi with us in the studio, and in our Abuja studio we have Dr. Toyin Agaja with us there. Now, Dr. Agaja, I'm getting signals that we can't link up with him right now. Before we went on break, my colleague Solami was asking a question. He said that there seemed to be a plethora of substandard pharmaceutical products in Nigeria, and from assessment, many of them are coming from India, from some of the reports we get. Is this a ploy? She used the word, is this a ploy, or is this some kind of an arrangement where you saturate the Nigerian system with substandard pharmaceuticals so there can be an excuse to say, okay, fine, your country doesn't have it, so why don't you go to India?
Well, we should ask ourselves this question. How are all these products coming into our systems? We have regulation agencies that are in charge of all what we're talking about. Then they should do their job. And much more than that, as I've said, we've over the years, we've politicized all these policies that along the line has destroyed our health system. So talking about a ploy or a way to the issue is, this is a sovereign nation. Why should we have infiltration from other world, destroying our own system? Talking about through what means have they been coming into the country? Perhaps talking about our roads, what are the customs doing? Talking about on the waterway. So all those things should really be checked. So the issue of is a ploy to destroy our system. Some people should be held accountable for all these things and make sure that those policies comes to play and tend to, if we may not really be able to eradicate or completely destroy or remove such things, but they should be played low.
Okay, we have Dr. Agaja back in Abuja. Your colleague just answered the question, so I'm going to throw another question to you now. The issue of knowledge sharing and training and retraining amongst Nigerian doctors, and how open are Nigerian doctors to this? Remember, before the health bill was passed, there were a lot of agitation. There are a lot of doctors who stood up and said, no, there are a lot of things on that health bill that shouldn't be passed. Issue of organ donation and stuff like that. Do you think Nigerian doctors are just closed-minded to some issues that are a global phenomenon these days?
No, actually, I don't think that Nigerian doctors are closed-minded. On the contrary, I think we're actually very open-minded. But the mindset has to come from the bottom upwards. We have the older medical practitioners who might not be so open, no offense to them, but the younger people are more abreast with what's going on. Technology is everywhere. Knowledge sharing is key. And of course, we want to be at a certain level with our colleagues in other parts of the world. So I don't think we're close-minded in that regard.
Oh, so what do you do to the older colleagues? Because they are still in the system anyway.
Well, that's the thing. You have to, the ability to relearn what you already know, the ability to learn new things has to be the culture for every Nigerian, old or young. You should be able to open your mind to what is new. You should be able to understand. You should be able to tolerate. And you should be able to accept.
All right, Dr. Toyin Agaja, thank you for talking to us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you very much.
All right, now, okay. I think this is where we come to the end of this segment. We don't have all the time, but certainly, Dr. Olujede, thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.